Hello everybody, welcome to QA Tech Week 2014. This is SharePoint 2013 workflows using SharePoint Designer 2013. My name is John Venables. I'm one of the senior business application consultants here at QA. And for a little bit of further background to me, this will play, there we go. I'm the subject matter expert for SharePoint Designer workflows and have been so through the 2007, 2010 and 2013 versions. Right, some general information about this particular course. As probably gather you've heard from Sam, this session has been recorded and will be available for later viewing. As far as questions go, please again pop questions into the sort of questions panel as we're going. We also have a post-event comments session, so you can post your any comments about the session itself to techweek@qa.com once things are finished. Please, if you do so, can you include my name, which is John Venables, and also the session name, which is SharePoint 2013 Workflows. Again, any technical queries, hopefully everything is running okay, but if you've got any issues, please again use the chat tool. We will be monitoring this as we go, and again, any questions, please feel free. Now, I'm going to use, not exactly here on this particular slide, because this is shared directly through the WebEx system, but I'll be sharing my desktop shortly, and I've got a couple of little additional training aids that will help with things as they go. There's a feature I use called Zoom It. What it will allow me to do, I can zoom in onto the screen to kind of give zoomed up views. I probably won't use that very much, but what I will use is to kind of circle or indicate areas that I'm going to talk about. So you may see red rectangles coming around, perhaps tick boxes and various other features while I'm explaining what I'm doing during my demonstration. The other feature I'm going to use is a fellow called mouse circles. Now what they should give me is a little preview of my mouse pointer and a rather cheesy little animation in a second. It will actually go in reverse direction, but to give you an idea that if I want you to be concentrating on something, I've made my mouse pointer as large as I can, and I'll use these kind of mouse circles again just to pinpoint what I'm talking about. Time permitting, if we have chance, we'll open the session to the floor at the end, but otherwise, again, any comments, if you can put those into the chat tool. Right, so what am I here to talk about? Well, firstly, to give you an indication of what end-user SharePoint workflows are and are about. The requirements to actually create a custom end-user workflow, what you need, along with practical demonstrations when I show my desktop in how to actually use SharePoint Designer to build the workflows that we need. Okay, so a little bit of background. Basically, what is SharePoint Designer workflows? Well, workflows are really designed to automate any business processes you have and do so using the SharePoint environment. There are two types of workflow available in SharePoint. Some of you may already be aware of the feature called the out-of-the-box workflows. Now, these out-of-the-box workflows, there are various versions. You may know of some called the three-state. I'm quite sure some of you may have used the approval workflow, but there are others called collect feedback, collect signatures, publishing approval, and disposition approval. These particular workflows will vary whether you have these depending on which particular version of SharePoint you've got and what features you have installed inside SharePoint. Those are what you may be aware of already. I'm not going to concentrate to work on those at all in this session, but what I will be looking at is how we can actually build our custom workflows that are much different from the out-of-the-box workflows using SharePoint Designer 2013. Okay, so there are basically a couple of different custom workflow types, and these will depend on the type of platform that you're using. So there's basically two what are called workflow templates. The first being 2010 workflows. If you've used SharePoint Designer 2010, then what you use in SharePoint Designer 2010 is also available in SharePoint Designer 2013. And these are available sort of exclusively to the SharePoint 2013 Foundation version, which is the on-premise version. What I'm meaning by on-premise is that your IT team or yourself are actually hosting and controlling that SharePoint environment. Now, some of you may be using Office 365. There are various different versions of Office 365, which I won't go into details of. But as far as 2010 workflows working exclusively to Office 365, if you have the government plans, G2, G3, or G4, then you'll find that that's all you'll have. Otherwise, there are 2013 workflows. Now, 2013 workflows will work if you have the server version of SharePoint on-premise. That's SharePoint 2010 Server Standard or Enterprise. Again, that's one that you govern. This will require a fellow called Workflow Manager 1. Now, that will need to be installed by your IT team, or again by yourselves, and configured to work on whichever web applications and site collections inside your site. Otherwise, Office 365, any non-government version will have Workflow Manager installed by default, which is managed by Microsoft themselves. You don't have to do any configuring, and 2013 workflows will be available. Right, trying to actually clarify what I'm meaning by the two types of template, 2010, 2013. Okay, if we're using 2013 Foundation or your government plans, you are stuck with, not so much stuck with, but you're limited to 2010 workflows only. If you're on your Server Standard or non-government 365 plans, then you actually have the 2010 as standard plus 2013. Okay, so you get two kind of lots of templates. And we'll see why these are kind of useful to have both as we run through the rest of the session. So those are the ideas of the types of workflows. We also need certain requirements to actually build the workflows we're playing with. So required applications is pretty much one thing. With your SharePoint Designer 2013, it's a free tool. You can download it quite comfortably without license issues from Microsoft. Just so that you're aware, those of you who have used 2010 workflows, copy and paste is now available within the workflows, and I'll show you how that plays, and that is a really good advantage. In addition to that, there are optional applications that aid your creation of the workflow. So we can use Visio 2013 Professional. This will enable us to visually build our workflows as a kind of flowchart type system. We'll be looking at a few of those figures as we go through this session. In addition to that, you can use Untitled Designer 2013 to control the look and feel of the forms you build for your workflow. That I'm just indicating that that is the other application you can use. I'm not going to touch on InfoPath in this particular session. Okay, so there are generally differences between these two templates, 2010 and 2013. If I'm using a 2010 workflow, then I get within it the ability to create steps. Basically, these are called sections to put the various features that your workflow uses, along with 12 types of condition to determine which particular features your workflow does, mainly checking for perhaps an approval status. There are then also 45 actions, which will again determine what your workflow is enabled to do. So these 45 actions include the ability to create emails, the ability to send task forms to people, the ability to change the approval status of documents, and also, if we fancy having a look at it, to get user profile data, perhaps get department, phone number, other features, depending on the particular user you're looking for. So I could be logging in and the workflow will pick up various details about it. 2010 workflows also use fellows called single item variables. Okay, pretty much it's this. I could create a variable that would be a string variable, call that variable first name, and it would then store details about my particular first name. 2013 workflows, similar but slightly different. We have now new features called a stage. Count a stage as being a whole series of reusable actions that I can then refer to as many times as I can in my workflow. We'll be seeing how this works later. Inside the stage, I can place my steps. I can place a series of conditions. Now notice that there are only 7 condition types in 2013 to the 12 in 2010. Similarly, I can also look at the actions that these conditions will then determine can be done. There are only 37 of these compared to the 45 of the 2010. So these actions include the ability to create very, very clever tasks. I will be looking at this one a little bit later, along with the ability to call workflows you built using the 2010 workflow system. We also have the ability to use loops. Loops enable me to repeat several actions over and over again. And we have a new feature known as the dictionary variable. Now, a dictionary variable is in essence a kind of container for multiple sets of variables. So I can have a dictionary called user. I could have within that user dictionary various sub-variables for first name, last name, date of birth, and so on. Now, in general grand total of everything I've shown you so far, when we actually you look at it, there are only 13 new actions available in 2013. 24 of the remaining 37 actions that 2013 got are actually shared with the 2010 version of the workflows. However, there are some subtle differences between some of those. So it also basically means that for the 2010 version of the workflows, there are 21 actions specific to 2010 workflows only. So 2013 workflows, if you have perhaps seen some SharePoint Designer 2013 so far, it will default to 2013 workflows. Do not get 100% tempted to just use 2013 workflows because you're missing 21 useful actions that aren't available to you. And what we'll do as we run through this particular session is understand the differences between the two versions and how each version can call each other. Okay, so I will be sharing my desktop fairly in a second. What I'm going to do is initially show you a 2010 workflow as a start-off example. Now, I'd like to show this 2010 workflow to indicate some of the actions that the 2010 workflow system's got that aren't available in the 2013 workflows. And these will include getting some Active Directory information about a particular user, and I will also look at the ability to update the approval status and add comments to a document or a list item. Okay, so the demonstration that I'll be doing in just a second will follow this principle. I would like my workflow to start as soon as I upload a document into the library. When that's done, I'd like my workflow to basically get the department and phone number details from the Active Directory information about the person who created the particular item. That will then get displayed in a couple of columns inside the document library itself. Okay, and I would like my workflow to set the status of the document to approved. I'll be placing on the document library approval status, and the approval feature that you add to a document library will determine whether all the end users see it. So if the document isn't approved, only the person who actually built the document and possibly the site owner will be able to look at it. Once it is approved, then all members of the site can see it. So what I'm wanting to do in this particular workflow is ensure that the item is approved on entry, and then that's where my workflow will finish. Okay, now if you can bear with me just a second, what I'm very quickly going to do is just share my desktop. Okay, now I'm currently just looking at SharePoint Designer. I'll point out a couple of things that are going to go on as I go through. If you happen to notice where my mouse pointer is going, and I hope this works okay, and if Sam, if you are prepared to just quickly interject if this doesn't work, I hope you can see some circles on my mouse pointer to try and indicate that I'm pointing to a certain place. At certain other points, I will be doing this particular feature. I'm just going to put a little square, or a very badly drawn line at the moment. I'll do a square in a second around the bit that says workflow. Right, let me just try and get me act together a little bit and just point out that I will be doing this sort of thing to indicate where I happen to be somewhere in whichever application I'm looking at. So I'm just going to point my mouse pointer down the bottom. Let me just point out, I've got SharePoint Designer open without any sites attached to it at the moment. I also have my PowerPoint slideshow, which will pick up from where I left off a second ago. And the other feature is I should have two sites in my web browser open. One will be a workflow site, which is where we're going to test our workflows. The other factor will be this workflow site has got an Outlook system attached to it, which is my own sort of personal Outlook in this SharePoint site, and I'm going to be able to see any emails that I generate through my workflow in that Outlook system. Right, I'm going to return now back to SharePoint Designer. I've got two sites that have been generated for this particular course. The first one, called Demo and Workflows, is where I'm going to literally give you an idea of how these things work. There's also another site that's got a preloaded example, which I will hopefully use from the end of the session. Let me just click on this Workflows one, let it run, and we'll start building a workflow. Right, it always takes a little bit of time for some of these services to kick in. So I'll apologize, here we go. Right, so this is my workflow site. Now, as far as I'm concerned, within this particular site, there are 4 places that are of interest to me to generate workflows. I'm just going to put my drawing tool, and I'm moving across to the left-hand side of the page here, and what I'm going to indicate is the 4 places. So hopefully you can see a square going around lists and libraries on the left-hand side. I'll do my circling in feature, hopefully make sure you know where I'm at. Lists and libraries is where you can build or edit the lists and libraries that will contain the data that your workflow uses. We also have content types. Now we'll be seeing content types in a second. Workflows can get attached to content types. The other factor about workflows is we'll be finding ourselves using a task content type to work with tasks to send people information as we run. Those task content types will need site columns, which I'm just highlighting now, and those site columns will need to be set up prior to us building the content type. Basically, at some point, we'll be using these inside the workflow, but you'll see how this goes as we run. In addition to that, I've got that one site object on the left-hand side, which is workflows, and that's where I'll be building my workflows directly. Okay, I'd like to initially just show you what happens and how SharePoint Designer works with lists and libraries. So I'm going to click on lists and libraries to find which particular lists I've got in this site. There aren't a huge amount, it's just literally a quick team site built out of the box in a sense as I built the site inside SharePoint itself, but SharePoint Designer is giving me the information that I've got. Now just to give you a quick idea of how nice and easy it is to work with Designer, I've got a fellow here called Documents, which is a document library. I'm just going to give that a click. To be aware of what goes on here in Designer, if you've never seen this before, SharePoint Designer will give you this particular feature here. Again, I'm just going to return back to kind of drawing mode. Now, I'm going to put a square around the entire lot. What I've just highlighted there is a summary page. In this case, a summary page for a document library. Inside your summary page, you will find grey boxes with features inside them. So I'm just putting a square around one called List Information. These are officially known from sort of Microsoft terminology as artifacts. So I might talk about List Information artifact, Views artifact, Customization artifact. And you then may find potentially, I'm just going to go down towards the bottom here and just go around a fellow called General Settings. I could then use certain settings within these artifacts to change the way that my document library works. These would be the same as my settings in the browser, only generally a little bit quicker to get there. So that's my document library. What I'm going to do with this particular document library item is in the customization artifact, what I'm going to do is be clicking on this area here called Edit List Columns. So I'm just going to give that a click. This will take me to a list to say, right, here are the columns that my document library uses. These are the ones that end users can work with. What I'm going to do for the workflow I'm going to use in a second is as follows. I'm going to add a couple of columns just by clicking Add New Column button on the top left-hand corner here. Click single line of text. I'm going to say that will be department, and I'll add another one, another single line of text, and I'll call that home. And when I've added that, if you've never seen Designer before, you will notice there are little tabs to represent what you've done. If, as I hope you can just see here, I'm just doing my circling in feature, the document item has got an asterisk by it which says it isn't saved. Save is quick and straightforward. I'm doing a right click at this point, clicking save, all done. Now the other feature I've got is a breadcrumb trail inside any one of these items inside SharePoint Designer. And this will tell me where I currently have to be, which is an area called Editor, sitting in Documents, sitting inside Lists and Libraries. And I can use this breadcrumb trail to get back to other parts of my system. So what I'm going to do is actually go all the way back to Workflows site to say, yes, I've completed what I need to do with this document library. What I'd like to do is build a workflow for it to use. So I'm going to Site Objects to Workflows. Now this will introduce to me a list of workflows which are available. I'm just letting things build a second. There we go. Certain workflows are pre-built in. Notice that these are the workflows that SharePoint itself uses, and if you've ever used the approval workflow in SharePoint, notice that the approval workflow, things like collect feedback or collect signatures, are actually SharePoint 2010 workflows, not SharePoint 2013. Anyway, a little bit of an aside there for that. What I would like to do is build a new workflow inside that document library that I've just added the 2 columns for department and phone number to. So I'm going to click the list workflow link on the left hand side because I like to build this workflow specifically for my document list. It will need a name. So what I'm going to do is to say select AD department and phone details. So collect Active Directory department and phone details. I could add a description. I'll leave that blank for the moment. Notice at the bottom we have a platform type. We should have 2 types of workflows. It defaults to 2013. By the way, yourselves, if you do have this drop down arrow, and you do not see 2013 workflow from that list, then you do not have the workflow manager installed if you only see 2010 workflow. Okay, as it is, I'm going to pick 2010 workflow. I'm going to click OK, and I'm starting my workflow off. So my workflow is currently in a place, if I can see where my mouse is on the breadcrumb trail, in a place called Text-Based Designer. I also have then another area that says Collect AD Department and Phone Details, which is the name of my workflow. And within this workflow, I initially have a step. Now, I'm not going to start building anything just yet, because what I want to do is make sure that my workflow is set up correctly. So I'm going to go back to, in my breadcrumb trail, back to the name of my workflow to open what is called the workflow summary page. And I'm going to wait a couple of seconds. I'm just going to hover my mouse over where it's going to happen. There it is. It happened almost immediately. I did it. I've now got a tasks and history list attached to my workflow. Right, this will need a little bit of explanation. Bear with me while I get a slide popping up. So this is talking about workflow tasks and history list. So when I'm building a workflow, my workflow has to have a task list attached to it. And the features about this task list are rather interesting. If I generate a task, that task will by default pause the workflow, stopping any further actions to be done until whoever's had the task has completed their actions. The task will send email reminders as an automatic feature of me sending a task. Somebody gets an email. And one of the rather neat features of the task is I can get people to put in comments about what they do, or they can put data into the task form to further influence how the workflow works. On the other side of the spectrum is the history list. Now, in simple terms, the history list is a place to log the progress of the workflow, whether it started, whether it's completed, whether we're waiting for somebody to complete the task. Information is logged in that particular place. The workflow itself, as we've seen already, is attached to either a list or a library. Now, your list and library is where the workflow runs, and the workflow will run from one of the individual records in that list and library. And as far as the workflow itself is concerned, each row of data, in terms of where the workflow is running from, so if my workflow is running on this annual report column, which we hope you can see here, then that particular row, as far as the workflow is concerned, is known as the current item. Right, let me just get back to the SharePoint Designer. So what I've got here is a task list and a history list pre-built as soon as I built this workflow. I'm going to stick with those as my features for this particular example. I've then got, you can see where my mouse is currently wiggling, over start options, how I'd like my particular workflow to start. So what I'm going to say is, for this workflow, I'd like it to start as soon as my item is created. Okay, once that's done, I'm happy for this thing to commence. I'm going to go back and click Edit Workflow. Okay, so what I've got my workflow is the ability to add 3 main things, and I will just circle these. Oops, sorry, I'm going to zoom in back. Excuse me a second. Circle these in turn. So firstly, we have steps. Now, a step is really just a collection of either actions or conditions. So it's just a means to kind of compartmentalize things for your own purposes. We also have, again, sorry for zooming in, conditions. Conditions allow me to say, right, I would like my workflow to only work or do certain things because if particular conditions are met. And similarly, you've also got actions, and actions are the actual physical features that the workflow does, the things that it actually gets up to. Now, I can add as many steps as I like. Adding a step is simple. I can just go up and click step. If I want to get rid of a step, I can do delete. Okay. One thing that is a little bit annoying about workflows in 2013 is, unfortunately, if you delete something, there is no undo. But I'll just stick with one step. What I'll do is give it a quick title. Okay, which is collect AD department and phone data. What I want to do is pick up somebody's department and phone details from a particular user. And then what I like to do is either add conditions or actions. I'll just start here with actions. So I have a drop-down arrow here of various action types, which are split into recent actions if I've done this fairly recently, core actions, document set actions, list actions, relational actions, task actions, and utility actions. There's quite a number of features in this list. As I said, there's a good sort of 40 odd of these items. Now, what I'm going to start with initially is a feature called the log to history list. Now, the log to history list is just me indicating to any user where my workflow's got to. I have a link to save this message. I can click onto it, and I've got either a free text field or a couple of buttons. My free text field, I could just do something like this, which is workflow started. Or I could use this three dots button to create a string builder and potentially look up for further information. Or just simply say, I could click this FX button to say I'd like to just look up specific information from somewhere. Okay, as it is, I'm just going to leave that as workflow started. I'm going to add another action, and the action I'm going to add is again from core actions called set workflow status. Now, the workflow status is a very quick visual clue to how your workflow is doing. Now, it comes up with three options I can pick from a drop-down arrow: cancel, approve, or rejected. However, I'm able to type inside these and add whatever features I fancy. So I'm going to say just rephrase that slightly. So I've called that collecting AD data. Somebody will then see a quick sort of visual interpretation to know where the workflow's at and what it's doing. Then what I want to do is actually physically pick up details about a particular user and their department, their phone details. So what I'm going to do is do another action, and I'm going to scroll down and pick a feature called set workflow variable. Actually, I'm going to do the variable. My apologies. Where am I? List actions. My apologies. I'm going to go down and pick a fellow called set field in current item. Now, if you remember a second ago, I built an additional field inside my document library called department. I would like to set that to the department of an AD item. So I'm going to click field, pick department. To value, I'm going to give that a quick click. And what I'm going to do is use the FX button to create a lookup to some information. Now, in this data source list, I have a number of particular sort of areas I can get information from, which include task history list, the particular item I'm working on, various other features. Now, within the bottom of this list is something called user profiles. And when I pick user profiles, it will allow me to pick up pretty much any set of information about a particular user. So my birthday, department, email, fax, first name, last name, hire date, you name it. There's all sorts of information about users in that list. So I'm going to pick my department. What I'm then going to do is say I need that to be associated with something. So there's a field here called account name. So what it's saying is, in order for me to pick up AD information, it needs a username. So what I will do is then say, okay, which user in this particular case? I'm going to use another lookup to point me to current item, which is where my document workflow is running from. And what I will do is pick up the created by field so that I can say, right, the person who physically creates this particular document in this library, can I pick up their department details? And I will click OK. Right, little feature about Designer, if you haven't seen this before, which is very useful. If you start getting used to which particular actions you'd like to work with, what I can do is start typing directly inside my step as I go. So what I'm going to say is I'd like to do set, and I will get a series of options that have set. So I'm going to again pick another set field in current item. This time I'm going to say we'll look at the phone, and I'm going to pick value, pick my FX, say that again I want that user profile data. Now pick up, and it's right down the bottom, work phone, and what I will do is say yes, that's going to belong to or get information from, just zoom that down so I can get it, created by person. Okay, so in other words, what we're saying is, we have details about the created by person. Can you pick up their work phone field from their user profile? You almost have to read these things bottom to top more than top to bottom. But that's it, all done. We've now added those items. Okay, I'm now going to add a couple of other little bits, and I'm going to start showing you some rather useful features. Copy paste is now available in SharePoint 2013 workflow. So if I fancy copying a log to history list and a set workflow status, I can grab my log to history list. I'm doing Control-C on my clipboard now, on my keyboard. I'm doing Control-V, and I've just pasted that. I'm going to do the same with my status. So I'm going to do Control-C. I'll just pop that in between the two, Control-V to add it in. So what I'm going to do is change my status to something visual for everybody to see, AD data updated. And down at the bottom, I'm just going to then change my log to history list to say workflow finished. Okay, so that's that workflow mostly complete. I'll come back and do some more in a second. Right, I'm just going to save this workflow at the moment. I can save this at any time, can come back to it later. It will just do a little bit of work, that's fine. So that's all saved. Right, I want to do another feature about approving a document when it goes in my library. And for this, I just want to make sure that everybody's okay with what is meant by document approval. So I'm going to quickly return to my SharePoint site, and I'm nipping over to documents on the left-hand side. It should hopefully be devoid of any documents at the moment, which is fine. And I'd like to make sure that this document library is set up for approval. Just notice that the department and phone columns that are built in SharePoint Designer have been also recorded here, because the two are actually communicating together quite comfortably. Right, I'm going to do approval status. So I'm going to go to library. I'm going to go across to library settings. And once I've done library settings, I'm going to go down to, on the left-hand side here, versioning settings where I'm going to be. I'm going to give it a click. And, whoops, I think that's a little thing. There we go. I'm only after one thing. Right at the top here, just where my mouse pointer is going, okay, I've got this option that says I'd like to require content approval. So I'll say yes. Now, what require content approval does is somebody has to approve a document in my library. If this is the case, I've now got this additional feature, which means by default, only users who can approve the item and the author of the item will see what's called a draft version, which means if I upload a document, I can see it, my manager or approver can see it, everybody else in my site can't. That's actually a rather useful feature for text documents, but we've now got that in. So if I'm going to upload a document, what I'd like to do is make sure it's visible to everybody. So I'm going to make sure it is approved as we go, and I want my workflow to work with that. So I'm going to click OK. Oh, hello. Okie dokie. Right. Maybe because I'm currently in Designer. I think, oh, no, that's okay. Right. Okay. I apologise for this. Wasn't expecting that to happen as I'm doing it. I'm going to shut Designer down and let's see if that will now work. No, we've got an issue. Okay. Right. Right. So anyway, what I'd like to do is just carry on if that's okay. Where I got to. Anyway, Where I was, what I've done is I've actually placed content approval status now on my document library. I'm returning back to SharePoint Designer. I'm going to go back to my workflow, and what I'm going to do is reopen up my list workflow. And hopefully when it pops in, okay, is I'm just now, this is me coming back into Designer. It's quite handy to show you this. So I'm basically now back into my workflow from scratch again. I'm going to go back in on the left hand side of it, to edit workflow. And in edit workflow, I've again got the fact that I've picked up this user data. Right, what I want to do is now approve the document as soon as it gets uploaded. And I'd like to approve this from the perspective of a particular manager of the site. So somebody who's uploading a document might only be a user, may not have rights to actually approve a document. So I'm going to introduce this feature called the impersonation step. So if you can see where I'm going, I'm adding a brand new step underneath my current step called impersonation step. The impersonation step, as it tells you here, runs as the workflow author. So I'm currently a site owner. When I publish this workflow in a second, it will assume the workflow impersonation step goes in with my rights. So what I'm going to do is to say, okay, I would like to approve this particular item. So I'm going to add action, and I'm going to go down to list actions, and inside list actions is a fellow here called set content approval status. So what I'm going to say is, as I go in, I will approve this particular item as being approved, and I'll add some comments. I'm just going to expand that to a display builder to basically say the following, which is approved by workflow. So I'll click OK on that, and that's it. So far, this workflow is done. I will save it. So it's all comfortably done. Let it think a little second. And now once I've done that, I'm going to publish the item. Clicking on my publish button. It does give me a warning to say that any conditions that moved by the impersonation step will be run as my credentials. I'm going to be saying I'm okay with that, so I'll click OK, let it run, let it do, and we'll just give this a quick test. Right, so I'm going to return back to my browser, back to documents. And if you can bear with me just a sec, I'm just going to get some documents open that I can use. Bear with me. So, because this is 2013, it's really easy to just drag and drop things. So I'm just going to drop in a sync with SharePoint document into this site. Just come out of my item. So this comes in by default as approval status pending. We don't have a department or phone column. So I'll just refresh this particular page. Hopefully my workflow will be running. It's currently saying it's in progress. I need a couple quick more refreshes to get it there. And as you can see, it's updated. I've got my department training. I've got my phone number added in, and the approval status is approved automatically, which will mean everybody can see. It should have also added my comments. I'm just going to go back to Files. I'm just going to click the item concerned. I'll just use the View Properties button here. And hopefully when it pops up, there we go, approved. And it tells me approved by workflow. So my kind of quick, simple sort of start-off workflow has worked very, very nicely. Okay, so that's a 2010 workflow, picking up AD data, also picking up approval of a document. Right, I'd like to introduce a 2013 workflow. Now, the 2013 workflow I'd like to introduce is something quite simple and straightforward. I'm just going to return back to my slideshow to show the idea of what I want to do. Firstly, there are certain components of a 2013 workflow template. We have our workflow settings, we have the new feature about stages, we get steps, conditions, actions, loops. And what I'm going to do with all that is build a kind of very simple issue track workflow. So this will be a kind of three-state workflow using the 2013 system. Each issue that I'm going to build will have an issue status. By default, it's active. It also has two other further features called resolved and closed. Now, what I would like to use are the stages. Now, a stage is kind of a compartment for several actions all in one go. And I'll initially look at how to begin my workflow, send a little email to somebody to tell them they've got their workflow organized. Then I'll wait around for somebody to say, yes, I've resolved that workflow. Once that's done, I'm going to check whether the workflow has a high or low priority. Now, if it's got a high priority, I'll send that to a particular manager who needs to look at closing these high priority items. So I'll let him sort of understand that through an email, and I'll wait for him to close that item. If the priority is low or medium, then I'm going to go to an other resolve priority and send an email to a low priority manager, and again wait for the status to be closed in that case. And this is rather handy. I can then get my workflow to point to the same closing stage to send an email to both people who sort of initiated it and was assigned to tell them what's what, and then my workflow completes. So that's the kind of concept of it. And I'm going to go to SharePoint Designer to build this thing. So I'm going back to lists and libraries, and what I will do here is very quickly build the list directly in SharePoint Designer by clicking SharePoint List, and I'm just going to go down right down to the bottom, pick Issue Tracking, and give it a quick name of Issues. And I'll press Enter and let that run and build. I'll just point out what you get in an Issues list. It's clicked, and I go to Edit List Columns, then I get titles. It's assigned to a particular person. There is an issue status, which is the sort of assigned, resolved, and closed. And we have a priority, say whether it's low, medium, and high, plus various other features. But it's those main columns, the assigned to us, the issue status and priorities that I want to concentrate on. Okay, slightly different way of building my workflow. So I'm going to go back in my breadcrumb trail to the issue summary page, and I'm scrolling down on the right-hand side to see a workflow artifact, and in that workflow artifact on the right, you can see where I'm going, it will say new. I'm going to give that a click, and I'm going to build a brand new workflow, this time based on the 2013 workflow template, which I hope you can see here. So I'm going to call this Issue Tracker. I'll click OK, and we're off and running. Right, different feel to a SharePoint 2013 workflow. We have new features. Notably, just hovering my mouse over it, we've got steps as before, but we now have new features here on the left-hand side called a stage. By default, everything works in stages. Steps are now subsections of stages. We also have the ability to loop things. We also, again, can do conditions and actions. The conditions are fairly limited. The actions, slightly different. But I'll scroll down here. Again, it looks there's quite a lot. There's actually a good 10 or so less than there were inside the 2010 version. So I'm going to give this a name, this particular stage, to say I'd like to do something. I'm going to call this the active stage. Now, at the moment, I'm going to consider my stage to be just pretty much like a step that I did in my previous workflow. And I'm going to start putting some details in. Right, I'm going to try and make life easy for me. I do know a number of my actions. If I know some of my actions, I can just start typing things like log, and it will build an action straight off. So again, I'm just going to put in things like workflow started in this case. And what I'd like to do is to just tell every end user that the issue status is equal to this message. Now, last time I showed you issue status, I was able to pick approved, rejected, and type something in. This time, I'm able to build a complicated string of details in my issue status. So I'm going to say something like this. Issue is, and I'm going to do an add or change lookup to get a little bit of value. There we go. Here we go. From the issue status column of my item. So basically saying the issue is currently whatever the status is. And I'll click OK. Right, I'm then going to send an email to a particular person with these users link, and what I will do is send that email to a particular user. Now, I can either pick somebody from my list, or, as what I'd like to do, I'd like to ensure that that goes to a particular person. So in this case, I'd like the user, I'd like to create a lookup to the user to the person that this is assigned to let them know what goes on. So I'm going to click Add, go to Current Item, and what I'm going to do is find, list it slightly, assigned to, And what I'm going to do is say I'd like to assign that this phase I'd like to show their display name in the case. Click OK, so I know who that's assigned to. I'll do a little subject of issue, and what I'll do is use my 3 dots and expand that and basically pick up the title of the issue so everybody knows which particular issue it is. Right, then I'll build a quick little email. That's what I will do is I'll cheat a little bit, so bear with me just a second. I'm just going to copy a few things from a text file for a second just to make my life easier. So basically a general email message. What I'm doing is just doing an email message and like certain fields to appear that my workflow will control. So I'm going to do an add or change lookup to the assigned to person, again showing that name as the particular display name, which will be first name, last name as it will show. I will then say I'd like to show the issue, which will be the title of the issue, showing there has been assigned to you. Please resolve this issue according to these instructions. I will add in another field from the issue list called description. So I'm basically saying, right, dear particular person, here's your issue, here's what you've got to do. So that'll be an email sent to somebody. Okay, I'm then going to make sure that my workflow hangs around, stops doing any more actions until whoever's got that email has said that the issue is resolved. So I'm going to add an action that sits within list actions called wait for field change in current item. So what I'm going to do is wait for my field, which is my issue status. There we go. To equal, drop down arrow, results. I'm waiting for somebody to say resolve, and then it will carry on. Okay, and then I'm going to let people know where we've got to. So I'm actually just selecting this select workflow status. I'm going down and pasting it in so that again I will get what the current status is, telling people where we happen to be. So that's an active stage. Looks a little bit like I built the workflow previously. However, we've got something new. It's a fellow called transition to stage, which means as I add other stages into my workflow, I can get this stage to move to that stage based on certain conditions. So I'm going to just click underneath here. I'm going to pick stage to build a second stage. I'm going to call that stage. There we go, resolved high. So if it's a high status issue, I'd like a certain particular person to resolve this item. Okay, now if that's the case, I can now use this transition to stage area. The transition to stage area has just one action called go to stage. Now if I click it, it just says go to a stage, gives me a link to say, right, you can go back to a stage you're on, across to another stage called resolve, or complete the workflow. It means each of these stages can be reused by the workflow as many times as I want. In fact, I could in essence create a loop, having my active stage keep rerunning itself till a particular condition is met, maybe. Now, what I would like to do is actually put that go to stage inside a condition. So I'm just going to click in the right place. It'll let me. There we go. Change it a little bit. Okay. Get rid of it for the moment. Right, I'll just retry that again. So I'll have to get rid of it and try again. Here we go, here's conditions. So I would like my go to stages to work based on a couple of conditions. So the condition I'm going to pick is a fellow called if any value equals value. This allows me to say if I've got my bear with me, sorry. If I've got my priority equaling either high or low, then I can go to one of these stages. So what I'm going to do is click the value link, click FX. I'm pointing again to the current item, which is the row of data I'm running from. And what I'm going to do is scroll down and find priority. And I'm going to say if my priority is equal to high, do something, otherwise do something else. So it's a high priority. I'm going to do my action of go to a stage. And I'm going to say I would like that to go to my high resolve stage so that high priority items get resolved by a particular person. Okay, right, I'm going to pop in the details for my high priority guy. So what I'm going to do is send an email to whoever is managing the high priority item. So I'll just give that a quick click. Right, in this case, I'm going to specify this as being myself, as being the person in charge. So here's my name, just let myself in. Okay, and I'm again going to pop in a little subject. So I'm going to pick the title of my item. I'm going to go into the subject area, bear with me. There we go. I'll put a little subject that needs closing. And I'll add in my relevant bit of text. Again, I'm just going to nick something from a little text box to make life easier. I'll just copy that in. So, dear me, change things very slightly. I want to just talk about which particular issue it is. So I'm going to again point to the field, which is my title field that represents the issue itself. Has been resolved by. So what I'm going to do there is add a lookup to my assigned to person. Now, I probably missed this a second ago. I should have made sure that yes, I'm fine. I'm all right. So I'm just thinking, right, the current item assigned to person, I'm going to make sure I see this person's details as first name, last name. So I'm picking display name in this case. And again, please close this issue according to these instructions. I will add in my description field so that it does what it needs to do. So there we go, nice little email to whoever's going to be in charge of this, telling them what they need to do. What I will do again is do a wait for field change for my issue status field to equal, not resolved in this case, it's going to be closed. Okay. And I will set my workflow status again because I can copy paste. I will drop that in the bottom and just sort of say, right, we now should have informed everybody that we've closed this particular item. Okay, so that's that. I will do another stage in a second for, in essence, the non-high priority one. I'm going to add a further stage to basically say that I'd like 2 further stages to point to a final stage to, in essence, close my workflow. So I'm going to add a further stage, which will be called a close stage. And my close stage will basically give an email back to the people who initially built the workflow telling them everything's complete. So in this particular case, I'm going to say, right, I've done an email, just go out to work. And what I'm going to do is email a couple of users. So I'm going to email the person who created the item, so that's the person who in essence put the issue on the board. And I'll also do a lookup to the assigned to person. Okay, so we have 2 people, the person who actually originally added the issue and the person that then was initially resolving that issue. And we'll plot again a quick little subject and the features. So I'll just do an add or change lookup at this point for the title of the issue. And we'll just say is closed. Okay, I'm just going to grab again a little bit of detail so I can make life easier for typing this stuff. So I'm just going to pop a little email in. So I want to say, dear the person who created the item, I'll pick my created by field, and I'm going to again say display name, and also I'm going to add the details of the person it was assigned to, again show that as display name, and the following issue is now closed. So just got the details again, back to pick up the title of the actual issue, along with my description field to tell everybody what the issue was about. Okay, so there we go, all done, all okay, all sorted. Right, so that's done. I'll just do one final little action, which is a log to history list, and I'm going to just log that my workflow is complete. And this stage will be the last part of my workflow system. But what I will do is just show you as far as this resolved high. Once I've completed that, I want to then go to the close stage. Quick way of doing this at this point in the transition to stage, just type go. You've now got that go to stage feature, and I can say, right, I'll go to my close stage. And also on my close stage, again, I'll just do go to end my workflow. Okay, so those are they. I will save that at the moment. How to actually work with building this stage in another type of system. It's not so much another type of system. If we have Visio 2013 Professional, then what I'd like to do is show you how to build what's called a Visual Designer view. So you can see where I'm going here. We're currently working in text-based designer. If I go to Visual Designer and wait a couple of seconds, then what should hopefully happen again, just what I'm able to do is we now have a Visio diagram of my workflow. Now, it may not be very clear because these items are tiny, so I'm just going to do a little zoom up, perhaps around about 75%. There we do. That's not too bad. Okay, so we have kind of little start buttons, stages, which are given as blue boxes, plus every particular item inside those stages represented in essence as small items that you can pretty much drag and drop and work with from a Visio environment. But they're slightly different from standard Visio objects if you ever played with it. So this log to history list will have a little cog icon here, which I can click and do message, and it will actually show me that I could add or change information. It's going to just show you that I can actually do it. From this sort of Visio type diagram will still work in the same way that I can inside SharePoint Designer itself. So things like the send email, if I do email, yes, there should be my entire email that I built earlier on. Again, I can build that directly from this kind of visual version. So this is working through so far, through each of the steps. So I guess hopefully slow this down a little bit. That's the first main stage. This is then my value equals value, which is the one that checks if the item was high or low. And it's at the moment, if you can notice here, I'll then zoom things up a little bit more so it's a bit clearer, that there is a line coming across this that says yes, to say if it is actually high, do these particular features. Let me go back down in my zoom level. So it's then saying, yes, here's my high state, send an email, wait for a change, set a workflow status. Okay, I'd like to pretty much rebuild something like this using this Visio version of things. So what I've actually got, just so you're aware of how this works, I've actually got Visio 2013 installed as an application on my desktop. This is still in SharePoint Designer, connecting into SharePoint, Visio 2013 to enable me to build the workflow directly using the Visio environment within inside SharePoint Designer 2013. It's incredibly clever and incredibly useful. Now I'm just going to move down my page a little bit to give myself a bit of space. And what I'm going to do is hopefully you can see over on the left hand side here, I've got various options. Now, I know they're not very clear because they're kind of dark grey on top of grey. I hope you see this fella called stage. So I'm going to drag onto my screen, kind of align it up a bit. This is a brand new stage inside my workflow. I'm going to rename this, okay, as resolved other. So this is what will happen, okay, if people don't pick that it is a high status item. Now, I'm going to very quickly zoom back down to about 50%, but it should still be enough to see what I'm doing. Notice I've got my condition up here. It's, if you remember, I had a little bit that said yes over here. I know it's probably not very clear. I'd like to connect it to this bit to say, well, actually, if my condition is no, can you do this stage? So I'm going to go to my connector tool at the top. I'm just going to drag and link the two items together. That's pretty good. And what I'm going to do is just right-click that line, select no, to say, if my condition isn't successful, go down and do these things. All right, let me zoom back up again, because otherwise the next bit is not very clear. Okay, right. So what I'm going to do is to say that I'd like to, where possible, show how this thing is going to get resolved. So I would like to add in various options. So I've got links on the left-hand side to point out the actions I can do, point out the conditions I can do. I'm going to go to actions. Okay, I'm just double checking what I previously did. Let's send an email and wait. So here's my actions. I'm going to go down to send an email. I'm going to drop my send an email action here. And what I can do at this point is actually build it directly inside this Visual Designer. So I'm going to send that to a particular person. So this person will be a chap I'm going to pick from my list called Andy. I'm again going to just build a quick bit of info for my title. So I'm going to pick my title field from my list and it's closing. And there we go. No, it wasn't the one that I copied there. Let me go back to my text. All right. Let me just again quickly copy a bit of text to make life easy for myself, and I'll again pop in, dear Andy. I'll keep this simple just because I'm just sort of aware of time, so I'm just going to say this issue has been resolved for quick. But at least you can see how I've built a brand new email inside this Visual Designer. Okay, so what I'm now going to do is I'm looking down again at my various actions, and I'm doing a wait for field change. I will drop that to be the next action in my list. And what I will say is, right, I would like to wait for the field, my field being my issue status, and I'll wait for that issue status to equal closed. And OK. All right, and the final thing I'll do, I'll cheat a little bit, I'll copy paste. I'm just going to very quickly, up the top here, there's two features to the Visio thing. Connector tool, which I've currently got on, which does actually mean I end up connecting shapes to shapes forever and ever. Or I can get a pointer tool, which allows me to do things like drag drop. So what I'm going to do is pick this particular item. I'm actually using control, and I'm dragging and dropping it into the bottom. So I've literally copied that particular item to again pick up the fact I've talked about where the issue status happens to be. Final bit for this, I'm going to go back to my connector tool, and what I'm going to do is link that to my final shape. So what I've got is my stage for my resolved other now links itself to that close stage. So this set of actions here have been reused in two particular places inside my workflow. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just nip back to my text-based designer. Ooh, loop back not allowed in a save your step. Okay. Should work. All right, very well done. I'll delete that link if it's not going to behave itself, and I'll worry about sorting that out in a second. I hope if I go back to my text-based design it'll work. Right. There's always one of these things. It works great in practice and then doesn't work when you try and do it. I do apologise, everybody. Okay, not quite what the issue was. I've practiced this. It's on the other stage. Thank you. Thank you, John, who spotted that. My apologies. And also, just to let everybody know, that's the issue working with the connector tool. It remains on and does things, and especially while I'm trying to demonstrate things, unfortunately creates myself extra lines when I don't want them to. So I will just save that back to no, and again, point this up to that link at the top. Right, so there we go. We've now hopefully connected everything. I am hoping I can go back to text-based design. There we go. So I've now got myself an active stage telling me send emails to various people. If it's resolved high, it's going to send it to that person to tell me certain things. Here's a closed stage to finish off my workflow, and my resolved other to send an email to Amber. And there we go. Our item is ready to run. So I'm going to do a quick publish. This will also save the workflow as I go. And we'll do this little test and see how it plays. So what I'm going to do, this should now work as a workflow to tell me what's what. And I'm going to click New Item. And I'm just going to give this a quick name of Issue 1. I'm going to assign it. I will have to assign it to myself initially because it's the only way I can actually kind of demonstrate things. Issue status is currently active. Priority I'll put to high. And what I'd like this to do is then just go down and click Save. And we're ready to go. Right, the workflow I've set, I didn't set to start automatically, so I'll need to start it manually. So what I'm going to do is select the particular item I've got, go to my Items tab, and here's my Workflows button. And what I should have available to me is a workflow called Issue Tracker, which I will click. Right, again, I'm just going to refresh this. Okay, now, this is weird. I've got something called Issue Tracker. I've got this little bit of status thing popping up called Active Stage. Now, I thought to myself, I'd actually put statuses in my workflow that said, actually, I'd like that to tell me which particular status my workflow's at. So something's weird, something's not quite right. Okay, I've done this deliberately. I'm actually going to just delete this particular item and say, yeah, that's not working correctly. I'm in test mode in a sense. I'm going to return back to SharePoint Designer and point out the thing that's happening. I'm returning back in Designer to the Issue Tracker summary page and just get you to notice the following. This particular item I'm putting a square around says automatically update the workflow status to the current stage name, which is good in a certain sense if you just want people to be aware of which stage the workflow's at in terms of all of these particular actions as a unit, which is active stage. If, however, I'm wanting my workflow statuses to kick in, I'm afraid that becomes a little bit kind of counterintuitive. So what I like to do is just go back to Issue Tracker, and I'm going to take the automatic update the workflow status stage name off. I will save the item. I just happen to notice that, yep, we're all ready to go, I think. and I'll just refresh my page and we'll see how things progress. Right. I should also do very quickly open up my Outlook page so we can see the emails that get fired off by my workflow. Okay, so I'm going to create another new item. I'll again call this issue 1. I will assign it to myself for demo purposes. I will say that the issue status by default is active. I'll set the priority to high. Won't worry too much about anything else. I will go down and click save. Right, so this again will do what it needs to do. Now we'll run that again. Okay, sorry, I do apologize. I need to get the workflow started. So I'm just going to go and click on my row. I'm going to go across to workflows. I'm going to click the issue tracker workflow. And we should be off. So I'll give that a quick refresh. Okay, now you may have heard a ring in my ears. That will tell me an email's been sent. So basically I've now got something that says, yes, my issue is alive. My issue tracker is telling me it's active. If I click this link, I should be told okay, where I have to be, but basically my issue's got me started, that basically it's running okay. I'm not going to suspend it, it's going okay at the moment. And I should have a little log to history list that I created myself telling me that my workflow has started okay. I'll just return back to issues to give you a little idea of what's what. And I'm going to go up to my Outlook, and what I should have, that was the one that failed last time, is something that says, dear me, you've got an issue that's been assigned to you, please resolve. I obviously didn't put any instructions in, so not quite sure what to do, but we'll take it as is. I'm going to go back to my issue, and what I'm going to do is just select it and imagine that I'm the person who's been assigned this item. I will go into edit item, and what I will do is change my status to say resolved. My workflow should now recognize this fact. I'll just click save at this point, and because it's high, should send an email on to somebody who is the high approver. Now another ring in my ears tells me that I've now got something that says the issue called issue 1 has been resolved by me, but I now need to close this item. So again, imagining that I'm actually another manager, another person, I'm getting something to tell me it needs resolving. So I can go back, have a little look at it, go to items, I'll edit the item. And what I'd like to do is just change it from resolved to closed. Again, I'll just go down and save what I've done. Okay, and again, I'll just refresh things. Okay, and in the process I've been doing, so I hope you've been, again, ringing my ears, just so another email popped into my inbox. As we've been doing this, you notice that the issue tracker, which sort of represents how the status of the workflow has been going, has been changed to tell me exactly what's going on at any particular time. So I should have one more email, which will basically tell me that my issue that I've done, again, imagining the 2 copies of my name represent the assigned to person should be different from me, and a manager, which in essence should be different from me, but I can't demonstrate it any other way. And again, it's telling me again that that particular issue has been closed and sorted. So I'm hoping that makes sense of the idea of the 2013 workflow having the features of reusable stages. Let me just go back in. So I can define what needs to be done, do different stages to resolve different features based on different conditions. Okay, now I had lined up a few other ideas that I was hoping to do if we've got time, but they're slightly running out. So what I'd like to do is try and give you a demonstration of how powerful SharePoint Designer can be with a preloaded example, which I hope will only take about 5 or so minutes to run. So if you can bear with me just a second, I'm just going to open up another site in SharePoint Designer. And it's a workflow demo site. Okay, let this run and let me show you what I've got. Okay, so this is a workflow demo site. Again, it's pretty much the same as what I had a second ago. I am just going to open this site in the browser. I hope everybody can see this okay. What I've got is, again, a document library, but I've also got a list of approvers, and I've also got this feature about my tasks. So my document library is where I'm going to run my workflow from, and there's a little example of something that's already been done that will send various tasks through to people based on different features. So the idea of the workflow will be as follows. As I upload a document, it makes a note of my department. Then, because I've got a department, I'd like to send a series of tasks to different people to say these need to be approved. Now, the way it's going to work is as follows. I have another list called approvers, and what this approvers list will do is say, right, there are different departments, sales, marketing, training, and therefore different potential approvers for each of those departments. So in the case of the department I belong to called training, I am the first approver, and that gets sent to a chap called Andy, and finally gets sent to somebody called Lorna. The workflow is designed as I upload my document into the library. Please can it send a series of tasks to 3 separate people. Okay, let me return back to SharePoint Designer to show you what I mean. I've got some workflows. Again, these are preloaded, but hopefully you've got an idea of how these work. So let them pop in. You'll notice that I've got 2, or in fact 3 completely separate sets of workflows. There is a 2010 workflow that again gets my department and phone details. That's the example I showed you earlier today. I've got another 2010 approval that actually gets further info and actually does the approval status of things, plus something to basically send approvals to 3 separate people. Okay, I'll just quickly point out what's what in each bit. I'll go get department 1 just to, again, recap what I've already done. And if I just quickly edit the workflow, I'm not going to spend ages looking too much at this. It's pretty much the same kind of thing. I'm doing workflow started, setting statuses, and I'm basically getting departments and phone numbers from my AD data and recording them somewhere in my list. I'll return back to workflows. I'm going to go down to the called 2010 approval to indicate what this one does. Again, partly something we did earlier on. I'll just edit the workflow. And this will, again, set content approval status with either approved or rejected with comments, and obviously log various things. It requires what's called an initiation form to work. The initiation form has an approval status and approval comments. So this will be a form that has 2 values in them as it starts, and these are actually going to be used by another workflow. So just keep in mind I've got a status and comments that are there as my workflow starts. I'm going to return back to the big workflow, which is a 3-person approval. I'm not going to save changes, it must have thought I've edited something. Now this is a rather big workflow, but a very, very clever workflow indeed. What this will do is use the new looping system. Okay, and what the looping system will do, I set counts going. So it starts at 1 to work out how many times I run my loop. I'm also going to keep track of how many approvers are going to be sort of approving the item. And as it goes down, it does as follows. For each time I run my particular loop, so there's a loop, this goes down a little while, just kind of top and bottom, there's an awful lot of stuff that it's doing. But try to give you an idea, it's basically saying, right, when I run this loop first time, grab me the approver name, which is the first approver, based on my department. If it's second time, grab me the second approver based on my department, third approver, and so on. I've then got various features here inside this list. Do apologize, we have a little bit of slowdown. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. That was this thing fiddling around. Where are we? Then what I'm going to do is make sure that I've got various features set up to record tasks sent to people. So I've got a task sent to a particular approver, which will be an approver name working out which approver I've got. And then I'll also record the comments that that approver makes. And what I've got are pictures here to work out how many times the loops run and how many times, in this case that I'm wiggling over now, how many approvers have done things. So there's a series of counts going on saying if my workflow or my loops run 3 times, do something, otherwise don't. So I've then got some transition to stages down the bottom, which means if all 3 approvers have approved things, then I'm going to go to approve stages, not go to the rejected stage, and I've got various features. Now, the approve stage says, okay, a couple of variables. One to say record an approved status and set an approval status and so on. And down the bottom, once I've actually worked out whether I'm approved or rejected, I'm actually going to get my workflow to call a second workflow, which will allow the 2010 workflow to do the approval features. Now, why I'm getting my 2010 workflow to do the approval features is because the approval status is not allowed in 2013 workflows. Okay, I'm hoping that's reasonably clear. If not, the demo should make sense. So what I'm going to do is just give you an idea. Let me just drop a document onto my library. If this will do, there we go. So this is going to be my workflow running away. So I'm just going to refresh.
Just to let you know, John, you've got 5 minutes to go. You asked me to give you a quick reminder. So
yeah, no, that's fine. I'm hopefully going to do this in about a couple. So anyway, what I'm doing is this new one called Understanding Governance. I'm running some workflows in the background, just to give you an idea of the power of this thing. And that's again popped my AD data in. There's my training department, there's my phone number. That's added by a workflow that works automatically in the background. Okay, I'm going to select this item. I'm going to go to my workflows button. And what I'm going to do is run my 3-person approval. Right, that should be underway. I'm going to refresh again. What I should be getting okay, there we go, is I've been given a task. Okay, I'll just refresh again. I'll hopefully hear a ping in the ears to say it's done. I'll just give this a quick click just to see it's working. I apologise for the refreshing here. It's just the speed of the system I've got. Right, there I go. I can hear something ringing in my ears. So I should have an email. So what should happen is as follows. If I go up to my Outlook, I've now got a action that tells me that I've got something assigned to me. So what I'm going to do is open up this task. Here it is. I'm going to edit my item and basically say, right, there's a various tasks, various things I need to do. It needs some comments. And I'm going to confirm that that is okay and we're happy with that. Right. Okay, back in my site, I'm just going to refresh this again. Let's just try to get in, just make sure it plays. I'm waiting for it to tell another person there's a task. It should do it in a second. There we go. So there's now a second task sent to Andy. Now I haven't got Andy's ID, so I can't go into Andy's email, but I will cheat. And what I'm going to do is go into Andy's site or Andy's email. He's got a task. I will edit that. And I'm going to get him to put some comments in. Something like that. Confirm that. All done. Go back to my documents. So with a bit of luck, I should get a task to Lorna. Lorna will do her task. Everything's I'm going to keep refreshing these things. So here's Lorna's one. Again, I'll send her into edit her item and she'll put some comments in. I'll confirm her, and that should be all of the tasks done. So back in my document library, all the tasks are complete. the workflow now starts running another workflow that will do the approval. So this is now my call 2010. That will refresh things and just give it another go. And that's complete. And that's actually then changed the approval status of my library to be approved, along with 3 different approvers. Just to give you an idea of kind of how powerful this is, I'll just nip back to this item, view my properties, and what I should have, okay, is it's approved and all the people who made their approval have added their comments in. Again, that's quite a complicated workflow as a demo. Hopefully give you the idea that it works. That's another email probably popping in to say that's all completed. Right, I'll return very quickly back to my slide show. If you can give me a sec, I'm just going to nip to a particular slide. Okay, so just to finish off, I hope you found what I showed you useful. It's a very, very much a taster. From my mind, I was hoping to try and do a little bit more, but if we can get at least a feel from the demo at the end how powerful it is, as well as an idea that yes, you do need to think about using both 2010 and 2013 workflows together as a kind of unit. Additional courses that are going to be available for SharePoint Designer workflows. There's 2 courses. One is a core skills and an advanced skills, and I'll just give you the details of both. So the 2-day course, which is the level 1, the basic skills, release date fairly soon. Here are the modules that are covered. I'll just get through all of them. So introducing what the workflows are, how to use SharePoint Designer to use the workflows, plus building different workflow features in the 2 types of templates for the workflow items, plus how to use features called tasks and initiation forms and collect data from different lists, as well as then creating little buttons that you add to your SharePoint ribbon to initiate these workflows quickly. It's quite a big topic, 2013 workflows, so it's looking like we're doing at the moment provisionally a 3-day course somewhere sort of mid-2014 for release date. Provisional outline at the moment is as follows. There's 10, I think, items in this list. So we can build things like new documents based on content using workflows, manage info like things like check-in, check-out, the idea of the loops that I've just given you a quick demo of, the Visual Designer, the features about using the Visio system, dictionary variables, how to call up web services, which will probably be a whole day in itself of how to get that to play. Workflows inside workflows, secondary workflows, reusable ones, using InfoPath to connect with it, and incredibly abilities to actually go and edit features called task processes, which are like the out-of-the-box workflows. So I hope I've given you an idea. I hope you found it useful. Again, this is recorded. Any questions I'm quite sure you've got, please forward them to the relevant place. So thank you very much for attending. Cheers, Tom. I hope to see you soon.